Federal party leaders are using Labor Day to shine a light on the promises to Canadian workers.
10 federally regulated paid sick days. On top of that, working with provinces and territories to establish a paid sick leave program in every single province and territory for all workers.
Double the Canada Workers Benefit. That will put up to $2,800 in the pockets of the most vulnerable workers.
Extend the Canada Recovery Hiring Program, which makes it easier not just to hire people, but to boost wages to address the labour shortage some sectors are facing.
Bruske is the president of the Canadian Labour Congress. It represents over 3 million workers in Canada, and she is in Ottawa. Thanks very much for joining us. And as we march towards Election Day here, one question to kick us off. Is the CLC endorsing any one party?
We're not endorsing any one party because, of course, we are representative of many different unions across Canada with many different thoughts on these particular issues. We endorse progressive candidates who want to move the issues that we care about forward.
So you ran for the NDP in the last election cycle and had things to say about the Conservatives at that time. What are you saying about the Conservative Party, which really is attempting to embrace workers, and including unionized workers, in this election cycle?
Well, I think the Conservatives are running to get workers to vote for them, not necessarily to represent workers' interests. And so my position hasn't changed in terms of whether or not Erin O'Toole's party is the right choice for workers. In fact, I don't think that's the case. We certainly saw that most recently with the announcement on gig workers and wanting to look at creating sort of a secondary tier of employees who have limited ability to access or have no ability to access under their plan CPP and employment insurance, for example.
The CLC represents how many workers now?
We're over 3 million workers across Canada.
What's your message to those members as they get ready to vote this election?
Become informed of what the issues are. Make sure that you are engaged when you're asking those folks who are knocking on your door, asking for your vote, asking them the questions about what they stand for and how they're going to be representing your best interests in Ottawa. Make sure that things like growing good jobs is part of the discussion. Make sure that things like social safety net and strengthening it is part of the discussion. Make sure that things like a strengthened healthcare is part of the discussion, and just transition for climate change. So I would ask workers to really ask those questions of the candidates who are vying for your vote.
I want to go back to what you were talking about, the Conservative platform as it relates to the gig economy. Their recovery plan would require companies that operate in the gig economy to make contributions to employee savings accounts that are portable. Do you think that's something that's good for workers?
Well, we think that really workers are misclassified as if they are considered to be independent contractors, because at the end of the day, they're receiving a paycheck. And so they are workers. They should have the same rights and privileges as any other worker in Canada, meaning that they should be able to be covered by employment standards legislation in the various different provinces, have access to health and safety legislation, have access to CPP and EI. And so we believe that that's the best way forward for those workers to make a living.
Have you found it easy to work with the government that preceded this election?
We have found the government willing to listen, to take our phone calls in that particular sense, right? And of course, no matter what government gets elected, we need to be able to develop a working relationship with whoever is in power to make sure that workers' issues are on the agenda.
So I ask in part because the CBC's poll tracker has the Conservatives in the lead right now, 2 weeks still to go, and we'll watch to see what happens, of course, but it could very well be an O'Toole government, minority or majority. If Erin O'Toole ends up being the Prime Minister, what do you think the challenges will be for your organization going forward to represent particularly Labour in the economy?
Well, the challenges are making sure, first and foremost, that worker issues are being thought of from a worker perspective, right? And so when we're looking at legislative changes similar to the gig economy or the gig workers type of thing, understanding and having the government understand why that isn't a benefit to the actual workers doing that particular labor is important. And so making sure that we can have those very frank conversations, have the opportunity to have our say, to offer alternatives so that workers can be represented at every level.
A lot of talk about COVID mandates in this campaign and really right across the country. Do you believe that the workers you represent should face mandates requiring them to have a vaccine if they want to go to work?
Well, we believe that every single employer across this country should be working where there are unions in place with the unions to discuss what is in the best interest of that particular workplace. We strongly believe that everybody who can get vaccinated should be vaccinated. We fully support that, of course, but at the end of the day, it's a workplace issue that each workplace differs in terms of the kinds of resources, the kinds of public facing realities that those workers have to contend with. And so we strongly urge all employers to work with the unions, work with their workforce to address the issues and the challenges.
Are there some workplaces where a mandate to be vaccinated is warranted?
Again, I would say that that's up to that employer to discuss with that particular workforce and to have a look at and see what the realities are. From a central labor perspective, we very much support workers getting vaccinated. We want to make sure that they have access. We know that in some rural and northern areas, even having access to getting the vaccine in a timely manner is a bit of a challenge. So we're looking at provincial governments to work on those particular issues to ensure that there's rapid and easy access. And again, asking those employers to work with the unions wherever possible to manage that situation.
Can I ask you just about your observations about this election campaign in general? We're more than halfway through. Parts of the country will now perhaps become more engaged now that we're, it is Labor Day as we move past this and get into the closing stretch of the campaign. The tone certainly seems to have shifted. Some of the issues have shifted in terms of what's being discussed. Can I ask you just your sense of what this campaign, how you see it as different from previous campaigns?
I do think that there's more of a focus on worker issues in this campaign. And I think that's just indicative of the last 18 months that we've come through and the very real reality that we are still in the middle of a pandemic. So I am pleased to see things like paid sick time being discussed. I am pleased to see things like elder care and affordable housing being discussed. I am pleased to see that pharmacare is still on the agenda, right? Again, climate change, the year that we've had and the news that we're seeing from not just within Canada, but all over the world is a real situation that we need to be able to start addressing in a very meaningful way. And that's going to require whoever forms government next to work on a just transition for workers so that folks and communities are not being left behind. So those kinds of things, hearing that being discussed is a positive. We have a long way to go, but we need to make sure that those folks who are asking for a vote are addressing all of those points. Bea
Bruske, really appreciate your time today. Thanks very much. Happy Labor Day.
Thank you. You too.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.